Hey, recognize this intro? Yeah. I liked it so much I did it twice. All right. Well, yeah. As you can see, the shed is done. So yeah, it was. I'm not gonna say a labor of love because that would be a lie. Um, but it's finally done. The door's done. After the door, we can finish everything up. So about this video, let me think. It's basically gonna be a long time lapse. Overall, it's like 6 hours of just film. No real conversing with the camera or whatever. So it's just gonna be a lot of time lapse. So I'm gonna do a voiceover on it, and yeah, I'm gonna talk you through all the parts we did, why we did them, what we did, what we used. So if you want to build something like this, you can. Wasn't terribly difficult. It's actually pretty easy, but there was a lot of details to making sure it was done right and that it worked and that it didn't leak and everything else. So check out the video. And I will see you at the end. Okay, so let's get this video started. All right, so I'm not a big fan of voiceovers, but I gotta do it on this one because I didn't record anything while filming. So what we're looking at here. So this is the outside of my slab. So when they poured the footers, you see how much of an overflow of concrete there is? It was just a horrible job. The form's crap. I started with a big fat wide chisel and that didn't work, so lesson learned, go with a very small thin chisel to knock out all your concrete. It makes it so much easier. Making sure I get down deep enough because obviously concrete's going against it, so I want to clean up everything and make sure it's all good to go. I didn't focus so much on the perfection of it because in a minute you're gonna see we're gonna drill some holes to install some like I think rebar type of thing to tie the two pieces together. So that's what we're doing here. We are painting on some holes. At first used some other paint, and then my buddy came over with this big bright pink paint. That way I could actually see what I was doing. So I have my little Bosch. It's just a simple hammer drill. Put that in there, drilled out the holes. It's a 4 foot, almost. It's almost 4 foot. It's actually only like 42 inches by 8 foot, so not quite 4 foot. But when we designed the shed that we're building here, we were going to use my old Jet 1.5 horsepower. After doing all this and new dust work and organizing the shop and everything else, I decided to upgrade my dust collector, so it was a tight fit, but the original size was for this, for the Jet. So just making sure the ground's level, so we put the boards in there. This is the form. It's just PT, pressure treated 2x6s, and now we're running a string line. I didn't know the point of this. I'm like, the form should be good, but the point of this is to make sure that the top of your form is level to the other side. So when you pour your slab, if it's not level on the top, obviously it's not gonna be level when you walk on it. So the ground, not necessarily level, obviously. We have to dig out a little bit to just make the form sink down a little bit more because it was a little too high on one side. But it's definitely gonna be a thick ass slab, just going off of what we had and make sure everything was good to go. We put the post in and we actually came back a day later, so to make sure everything didn't settle, and then we had to kind of like mess with it, go in, go out, go in, go out, just to make sure everything was nice and square and plumb and good to go for that. And on the backside that you don't see here, we ended up filling in some of those low spots there with dirt on the backside just to make sure we didn't have any spillage. So like right there on the bottom, you can see kind of like some daylight shining through there. We actually ended up going through and filling in all the backside with dirt, making sure that there was no gap so the concrete couldn't leak out. And there's a string, just making sure that it's square. So it should all be on the front edge of your long piece, and it was. So I came in with the air compressor, drug that out. It's a little DeWalt 25 gallon, 15 gallon, I don't know what it is. It's air compressor. But I knocked all the dust out of the holes because, well, when you put in what we used, it doesn't like dust. So clean out the holes, very good. It's a very good thing to do. All right, I'm not sure what this is. It's kind of like that Thixo set from Boat, but it's just way more industrial. Um, you have this little cap right here. You squeeze the tube, it mixes together in the tube, and it's good for bonding like rebar to concrete. It's really good for that. Then we use some shims just to make sure everything was nice and off the ground. So now when we pour our concrete, it could go under the bar and over the bar and around the bar and everything else. Ended up throwing some that white and plasticky stuff. That's like a little, moisture barrier membrane. Clearly, it's not doing a lot right now because it's flooded with water, but it'll do the job in the future. And obviously, there's also, it's not rebar, I don't know what you call it, that metal mesh thing, if you will. So make sure it wasn't all the way at the bottom. So we, as my buddy poured it, he would like lift up every now and then just to make sure it wasn't stuck to the bottom. So it was kind of like in the middle of the slab that we were pouring. Apologies for the camera. I didn't like him going back and forth, but what can you do? And here we're using some rocks just to hold up some of that so we can get concrete underneath it. Simple pouring concrete into a bucket. If you ever wonder what the inside of a mixer looks like, that's what it looks like. Here's my boy helping me rinse it out. I'm getting the last bit of it out, and then he wants to make sure he used the hose because he's all about being helpful. Alright, I think this is called skirting. I'm not 100% sure, but just take a 2x4 and go over back and forth. Here we're building the walls for the shed. That's going to be a doorway, that's why that one looks so weird. But if you saw my sarcophagus build, you know how to build walls, or how we build walls, same way. So pretty simple here, just putting them up. Trying to line everything up where we want it to be, not necessarily where it's going to be at the end. Using some clamps to hold them together so they don't fall off, but yeah, just make sure everything was like nice and square and where we kind of needed it to be. Screwing them together so they don't come apart. Obviously nothing is attached to the building yet. Here we are drilling into the concrete and then putting some bolts in there. That's just a header board. Oh, that's why it's all jittery. My son, yay. Yeah, putting a header board on top of those to tie the walls to, call it like the north and south wall there, to the main long wall. So you kind of overlap it that way. You drill into the side walls there, then the overlap hangs over onto the long wall that I'm working on right there. Just tying everything together, making sure it's all good to go. Then once the sides are done, you do the one in the middle, so using a clamp to make sure it's nice and flush on the outsides and just nailing it down. Going down with the nail gun and securing everything to itself. All right, now we're putting on the sheathing. So on the bottom of that is some tape. It's like a membrane tape, so it's supposed to stop splashbacks. So obviously it's OSB. If it gets wet, it just sogs. It swells, it gets soggy, it's just horrible. So we're measuring, making sure everything's nice and square. It wasn't, so we tried using this board here to level everything up and get everything plumb. That worked, but it didn't work as well as I wanted because it wasn't square. It wasn't plumb in both angles. So what we ended up doing was taking that out, and then we grabbed a ratchet strap, I tied it to my fence, and I tied that to itself. And then that was able to pull it into plumb on the side. Then we just thought that those be. I'm using a carpenter square here, or a drywall square to mark my holes because I am horrible with nail gun and following a line. So during installing the top OSB sheet there, I missed my mark a couple times, even though I had the square there. There, took a nail out and You know, I thought I was good to go. I managed to shot probably 5 or 6 nails back out. So he tapped them out, and I came back with the hammer and pulled them out. And here we're cutting the other sheet down. I made sure I turned off the brake on my saw stop because there's that flash tape again. So it's just supposed to stop water from soaking into the ingrain, or not the ingrain, but the sides of the OSB. And missing some nails, and that's what I do. I'm not great with the nail gun. I can't follow a line. It's going to be easier for this part just to nail OSB to the door opening. So that's going to be the door. Obviously, you saw the intro. That's the door. That's the side I stand on when I introduce myself and talk about the door. And then I just took a flush trim bit and trimmed it up. Now, I actually went through 2 bits on this one because every time I did this, the bearing came loose, and then I just started digging into the actual side of the door mount. We had to go back and forth a couple times on this to get that angle right. It ended up to be about 18 degrees, but we went 17.5, 19, 16, so we went back and forth several times to get the actual angle there just right so everything flowed. I don't know what the pitch is. It's decent enough to shed water. Obviously, it's not what you would use for a house or a really big garage like my metal garage there, but it works. Cutting off the ends just to, you know, make a nice little overhang because you don't want those too long. Here we have a spacing block in between them, so they're secured to the wall. We know the spacing there, and we use a spacing block just to make sure they were all the right sides, like gaps between them. Cutting out the angles, just, you know, covering, basically just cover everything with OSB. So I tried to use the handsaw for this one. I used the track saw to cut the straight parts I could. And I'm like, oh, I'll use the handsaw because, you know, it's easier. I'm like, nah, that was a little bit too much work to do the handsaw to cut all the notches out. So I'm like, wait, I have a full garage with power now. Why am I wasting my time with the saw? So went over to the bandsaw, notched it out, and that worked perfectly. So I had to cut out the little notch there that fit over the 2x6. So I'm not sure what this is. That gas tape in the back, that's what we're using here. It's basically just a waterproof membrane. It's really, really sticky. So we put it on the roof first. Obviously, you want to do everything from the bottom up. So covering the bottom here, put one sheet on, then do half of it, then the other half. So we're gonna put the top half on, then we lift it up and put the bottom half on. It's supposed to self-adhere to the actual OSB. It did, but you see it starts peeling off. So I actually came back at the end. I didn't probably show on camera, but I went through with a nail gun. Not a nail gun, that's a lie. A staple gun, just a little, you know, handheld one right there. And I just stapled it down so it didn't, you know, start peeling off. We just did all the other sides. And cutting off what we didn't need and caulking the seams, trim the, you know, pieces for the overhang. Here's the edge drip for the roof. So obviously the tin will go over that, and then the side tin will go under that. Start cutting out the tin, just angle grinder, measuring, cutting, measuring, cutting. Nothing really complicated about that. It got a little bit complicated once you start dealing with the angles of the roof and the pitch and stuff, but overall it really wasn't that big of a deal. That's the side piece, and then this corner is pretty much done. So for my door jamb, you showed, maybe you didn't see. Anyway, I built the door for it. I made a video on that. Go watch that if you want. If you don't care. There's a little bit of a gap. So what I did here, I had just ripped down some really thin OSB, and I tacked that into place. That way, when I put all the shielding up and everything else, I had something to, you know, screw or drill into. For the tin and the side pieces. So we actually used the drip rail all the way across the door on the top and the bottom and the side. So that's what you just installed right there. The tin goes against it. There's a little channel it kind of like slides into. So without that extra little half-inch piece of OSB I was tacking in earlier, it wouldn't have had anything to hold itself against. So having to measure this out, just weird angles, just measure cut, you know. Had to do it twice since the first measurement was a little bit, probably like a ½ inch too short. So I just had to open up the gap a little bit. Then luckily the offcut was able to fit just in there just fine. So he's cutting it off right now. And yeah, so there it is. It's going the wrong way, but at the same time, it doesn't make a difference because it's the very top of the piece and everything's covered, and it's like, well, it's gonna get inside there. Then just making sure you get all the sides. So doing the door, I wanted to do it the same all the way across, but because the door is so close to the side of the building, if I ran the panel horizontally on the door so everything like lined up, then the ribs would have interfered with the jamb and the drip edge, and it wouldn't have been able to open all the way. So we decided to go vertical. That way, I'm only using the flat sheet, and just the thickness of the metal, not using the ribs to interfere with it. So on a door handle, pretty easy. Just drill out some holes, add some screws. So putting this in, it's not meant for metal. So what we ended up doing, we drilled out the hole that was big enough. Then we actually inserted a thin piece of like hardwood on the backside in between the rib. That way the screw has some wood to bite into, because it wasn't really trying to bite into the metal. So that little thin piece of wood made it so it could bite it, and it pulled the metal and the drip edge all together. So it was really nice. All right, so that's the shed video. Wasn't terribly boring, I hope, or maybe it was. I don't know. Um, if I were to do something different, or if you were to do something different, what would you tell me to do next time? So if I ever do this again, let me know your inputs about what I should do different on something like this. I don't plan on building a second one back here, but again, you never know. I do have a lot of space back here, so if I have to build a second shed, I can. Not that it's something I plan on doing ever. But yeah, so that's it. Let me know what you think, and I will see you on the next one. All right, that's it.